Yeah, good morning, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome, Mr. Avery. 10 minutes, and I'll try and indicate when there's 2 minutes left. And if you wish us to ask you some questions, please allow some time in your presentation, because the time is yours to do with what you wish. So, Good morning, welcome.
Well, I'll start with a little background about me. I live in Central Hawke's Bay. I live in Central Hawke's Bay. I'm not a political animal. I'm very nervous to be here, but I've forced myself to be here because I think this is so important to us. My brother had a farm in Australia, in Victoria, which was irrigated, 1.5 million hectares. That was fed from a dam built in the 1920s, and that area was an extremely wealthy part of Australia. Without that water, it would have been wallabies and spinifex. I mean, that dam's coming up for 100 years old now, and the effect it had on that area is phenomenal. So I've seen firsthand, long-term, what water can do. And my whole thrust of being here is I think that there is some people here are not thinking long-term enough. Everyone's going on about the cost of it. It will never, ever be cheaper than now. 50, 100 years, I think that's the least that we should all be looking forward. Not next 5 years, 10 years, Can we get a return now? Because the long-term return for Hawke's Bay will be phenomenal. And I mean everyone on Hawke's Bay. Not just a select little few, not just our local farmers around Onga, which certainly they'll be the first to benefit, but everyone. That will just trickle down to everyone. We all know Hawke's Bay can get dry. It's a regular occurrence. And at the moment they're talking about we're possibly this summer going to have an El Nino. If that happens, it'll be another little indicator of what reliable water can do to us. Some of the people who are against it have talked about water quality. Those sort of things can be worked through. I know that the fertiliser farmers are using now will be very different to what they use in 50 years' time, and it was very different to what they were using even 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's an evolving thing. Again, I get back to that long-term thing. 3 years ago, I went with a friend. We flew in March. We flew up from Waipuck, over to Waipawa, up the Waipawa River, across the ranges, back down along the Tuki River, back to Waipuck. And I was surprised at times the Waipawa River wasn't flowing. Well, it was, but you couldn't see it. It was under the gravel. I didn't realise that, and I've lived there all my life. I assumed it flew all the time. The water flow was there all the time. So I can't understand how having a more reliable summer flow can be a negative thing. To me, it's just a no-brainer, really. I'm sort of run out of things to say, except that I think that if you look at what's happened in Hawke's Bay in the past, like the chap from the port here, when they built that port, which I believe the now port was built after the Napier earthquake, they were visionaries. They looked ahead. Big job, big expense, a lot of problems, but they met it head on and dealt with it. My grandfather was one of them. He was on that port. Those sort of people were thinking long term and for the best of all of us, not just themselves. I mean, these sort of things like this affect our society in Hawke's Bay right across, from whatever, whether you're a freezing worker or a farmer. It affects us all. A sort of slight side issue to this. My folks used to live in Takapau. They've since moved into town, they had to. But the water quality for the residents of Takapau is diabolical. It's awful stuff. It needs to be fixed. I believe the dam can supply Takapau with decent water, including the freezing works, which is a major cog in the wheels of Hawke's Bay's economy. The moment they have to have bores all over the place under the ground, and some of that water has dubious quality, fresh rainwater, got to be good for Takapau freezing works. What's good for Takapau freezing works is good for Hawke's Bay. Anyway, that's all I've got to say, except there was one little comment. I'm quoting here, and this is sort of a point to people who well, for want of a better word, green. And this one was, you have to be in the black to be green. I thought that was pretty important. To me, I took that means that no matter what your political leanings are, you have to have sound financial background. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Avery. Right, we've got 4 minutes for a few questions here, so Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that. Was from your heart, and I really appreciate that. As you know, Plan Change 6 is quite tough. The draft was quite tough. It may change or may not when none of us are aware. Do you think the farmers that you know and live around will be able to live with that plan change and still grow their businesses and still want the water to grow their businesses?
Well, there's several assumptions there. I think everyone's blaming the water quality on the farmers. I think it's a bit bigger than that. One of my clients, he's got a farm which he's got a fair bit of irrigation on from bore. This year he grew barley and then harvested, and then they put in beetroot, which they've harvested, and it's now in grass, and before Christmas time he would have fattened a whole generation of lambs on that. That's what water's done. That's what water's done. I mean, everyone's going on and on about dairying. Well, as we know at the moment, dairying prices are going down. It's one of these things like this. What it gives farmers is, like this chap, is options. But he's lucky he's got water aquifer underneath him. But that's got a whole set of problems too, where there would be a lot of other people who could do something like he's done. It just increases their all their options. And every single bit he's done, he's grown as an export crop for Hawke's Bay. And without exports, we're nothing. To me, exports is like blood to us. Without it, you die. And as far as, like you said, the water quality, I mean, these are issues that you work through.
2 minutes remaining. Other questions? I'm working around the room. I'm going to get to you this time, Councillor Barker. I might go there now. Why not?
Thank you, Marcus. I hope you're still riding your bike. My question is about the circumstance in which the councillors themselves should make the decision. Do you believe that the regional councillors should exercise the highest standards of fiduciary duty when making a decision about the $80 million investment into the dam or not? Should the councillors have access to the completed business case, business plan, all the numbers that they require? And should they be able to ascertain for themselves that the conditions precedent are met, i.e. that there is 40 million cubic metres is contracted for supply, guaranteed to take, and guaranteed to supply?
Well, I'm not sure, Rick. As I say, I'm not really a political animal. I'm not involved in any of this sort of stuff. But I think if the water's there, people will use it. I understand that these things have got to pay their way, but I actually think this is going to be the greater good of all of us. So I personally feel all of us, including me, should be investing a little bit into this for all Hawke's Bay, and maybe even national government, probably, because it benefits the whole of our society, not just us here, but I mean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
On its head. Thank you for your, Mr. Avery, for your submission. Do you think Council is in a position now to make a decision?
Well, I'd like to think so. I mean, I don't really follow it really closely, but I think it's great that they've picked up and come with, up with this proposal. Whether it's too big for the regional council, I don't know. I've got no idea. I don't know. As I say, I'm not really a political animal. I just don't know. But I cannot see a negative to this thing. Really can't.
Thank you, Mr. Avery. That's time up. We'll let Mike Peterson grab a breath and we'll go with Andrew Curtis now.